This channel started with Planetside 2. Indeed, I started playing the game before it was released during the beta after getting a code from the fabled Mr. Higbee himself. But it is 2023. There's been significant water passed under the gaming bridge since the plucky upstart MMO FPS first arrived. There have been so many evolutionary steps taken in the 10 plus years since Planetside 2's launch, it's worth asking, is it still relevant in 2023? The reason why I thought about this question was that I found myself introducing the game to some friends who had never played before. They're FPS gamers for years, but they'd never stepped foot on Auraxis. It forced me to look at the game not only from the new player experience, but also asking whether it's even worth new players climbing that steep learning curve to actually access the heart of this game that I've loved for all these years. Just how much of my enjoyment is supported by nostalgia? Clearly, the gameplay of Planetside 2 keeps me coming back year after year. That's a good sign, as pure nostalgia can only carry the experience so far. There's still a unique aspect to the game that no other has managed to replicate, even in the world of milsim titles in the shape of Hell Let Loose and Squad. The longevity of Planetside 2 also speaks strongly in its favour. There aren't many games to have this sort of staying power, especially in the FPS world. Many titles have come and gone in this time. So perhaps those MMO elements are helping it in that regard. People still play old MMO titles years after their launch, so perhaps the unique blend of FPS action, longer term progression, and an open world feel have given the game some more endurance. And a quick aside to say, if you are enjoying the video, please do tap the thumb up button. It helps me out with YouTube and discoverability and all stuff like that. And if you tap that subscribe button right now as well, then I appreciate that too. Thank you so much. I still find the best way for people to learn Planetside 2 is to have things explained by an existing player though. And that way, PS2 isn't like a lot of FPS games at all. That layer of complexity between the player and the action still needs to be navigated if you want to really experience the heart of the game. Reading the map and knowing where the good fights are, where they're about to be, and what happens if you suddenly find yourself suddenly in a quiet base are skills that new players just don't have. Similarly, getting over and asking the new players to put aside the focus on existing FPS metrics like KD ratio is a difficult task. Perhaps even more so when you're also trying to explain that fundamentally this is a game of logistics, and putting that in a way that it doesn't sound boring or reductive can be a difficult task. The strengths of the game are also plain to see when you're playing with new players though. Scale is of course top of that list. In 2023, there's still no game that manages such awe-inspiring spectacle of players in one area. The swarms of troops, the tracers that are bisecting the world, the vehicles caught in crossfire, and even the firefly of aircraft leaving their trails across the sky are a sight that is unique to this special title. The selection of player-made spawn points also helps show new players the metagame of tactics and logistics that support all this spectacle. Without ways for players to remain in that area, the individual bases can become quiet seemingly almost in an instant. There's also these seemingly small questions that new players ask that actually speak to larger and again more different design decisions in Planetside 2. Something apparently simple as, how does this end? Or, when do we win? There are clear mechanics that people understand from other games, even milsim ones with open world maps and metagame player-made spawn points. But like other MMOs, there's no immediate answer to that question in Planetside 2. The concept of declaring your own win condition, a successful defense or triumphant capture of a base, can be a win condition, especially if it's something that's taken almost an hour of grinding to do. But almost always the attention turns to the next base and the next objective. You get kind of carried along in that wave. I think Planetside 2 veterans learn to enjoy the fight, even as far as castigating other players for blowing up enemy sunderers and drawing a fight to a close if that's the only decent combat zone around at that time. For those vets, something like a three-way grinding fight for the crown for an hour might be fun, but for new players, I'm not so convinced. I think alerts actually help a lot in this regard. They help demarcate and bookend play sessions with easy-to-understand win conditions. But without those, I find new players can find the experience lacking in ultimate, satisfying resolution. Yes, we won, but what does that mean if there's no pause for reflection? There's no communal scoreboard and wave of GG's, every time a base is captured. In a similar way, there's the realization that individual players tend to not have a huge solo impact in Planetside 2. There's a real small cog in a big machine feeling, something that I actually enjoy as it tends to highlight team play and camaraderie. But for new players coming from other traditional FPSs, it can be a tough pill to swallow, especially if you're a talented player who's used to carrying their team. That lack of bearing over the final outcome can be a turn-off when they've not enjoyed something like being part of an organised platoon and turned the tide of battle that way. We can talk about the future as well at this point. It's not massively long ago that the notion of a potential Planetside 3 was even brought to the surface by the devs, though that was in the time of the launch just before the ill-fated Planetside Arena. And indeed, looking back at that sister title now, it's clear that Planetside Arena launched into an extremely busy Battle Royale market in a way that didn't overly gel with the existing player base of Planetside 2. As someone who did play Planetside Arena, I do feel like it didn't really get its dues for the things that it did well. If it had dovetailed with Planetside 2 more, the really high quality assets that were made for Arena, well, it might have found its footing with a more support from the Planetside 2 faithful. That's all in the past now, of course. Post the decision to end Planetside Arena's development, we've seen perhaps the most content added to Planetside 2 since its launch. There have been significant developer lineup changes in that time too, and we've really not had any renewed discussion of a successor to Planetside 2. I don't think I'm being an amateur Nostradamus when I say that I'm not exactly holding my breath for Planetside 3 anytime soon. We have seen progression in some core tech areas of Planetside 2 though. Engine updates to bring reflections and other lighting improvements have been rolled out. It's no Unreal Engine 5, but they are improvements to an engine that for years had very few features added. And we are still getting content updates with the root and branch redo of the player-based creation systems with all new buildings. That's currently on the test server. So unlike much of the initial lifespan, this is a game very much in active development. It's a game that still, after all these years, delivers the scale of combat unmatched by other FPS games in 2023, and indeed even some new MMOs struggle to show as many people in one area as Planetside 2 manages. But there are some serious learning curves to those experiences, is unfortunate, but in a game so different to others in the FPS genre, there was always going to have an uphill battle in that regard. I'm not saying there are any easy answers here, it just seems to be one of those development constants that the new player experience could always do with being redone. I'm saying that in 2023, I think it is still worth climbing that hill as a new player. Finding people willing to show you the ropes is probably the best bet. Voice comms and an open platoon with some patience will still go a long way. For veterans, there's still much to love in Planetside 2. If you're like me, then there's a lot of nostalgia. There's some reminiscing about just where things were and just thinking about, well, where was Spec Ops training camp? I think it was the bottom west of Indar, is it? I can't even remember now. But the core of what you fell in love with is still here in 2023. It's very much worth your time, even next to the flashy, cutting-edge gaming options in your library. What do you think of Planetside 2? Have you been around since the start? What are your thoughts on this as a game in 2023? Let me know your powerful thoughts and feelings by leaving a comment below right now. Like always, I'll be reading every single one of them. If you did enjoy this video, please do tap the thumb up button. It helps me out a huge amount, and maybe even tap subscribe if you're enjoying the channel too. Thank you so much for watching. All your support really is appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Take care.